Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Shankism. This is Islamic expansion and achievements. Alrighty, let's get into it. So, Islam will spread. We talked about kind of the fundamentals and beliefs of Islam, and now it's spreading through Mecca and then from Medina and Mecca and that area with Muhammad. And as you see in the map here, for about 10 years, Muhammad expands it on the Arabian Peninsula. And then from 632 to 661 AD is what you see in orange on this map. And this kind of goes throughout the Middle East. It goes into what we know today as Iraq, Iran, up into Afghanistan. But we've also learned this area as Mesopotamia earlier in the year. But this is, 1,000, 2,000, or 3,000 years later from when we learned it. We're now in the 80 range. But you also see in the orange it gets into Egypt. So Islamic expansion under the first four caliphs, which are successors to Muhammad, it expands into Egypt and North Africa. The pink territory, okay, is the Umayyads, and I'll talk about the Umayyads here shortly, but that's from 661 to 750, and they expand all of North Africa, push to the Indus River Valley in the east, but if you see in the map there, they actually get as far as Spain, into Spain. So the Muslims will own and control Spain for about 700 years, right? So what you need to put down is it unified tribal regions, the Arabian Peninsula, North Africa, and the Near East, which would be the Middle East. It did not force people to change their customs. Okay, the adaptation of beliefs, you didn't really have to change your customs, which was good for a lot of people, and a lot of people wanted this. The Byzantines were in this area. You can kind of see the Byzantine Empire in this, but they're really going to be not much left after the Muslims come through. The Muslims will completely eradicate anything that was left of the Persian Empire, and the reason this was easy was because the Byzantine Empire and the Persian Empire were constantly fighting each other, and the Muslims came in, and they were both Byzantines and Persians were weak, and the Muslims came in and rolled over them, and people were looking for a new rule because both the Byzantines and Persians were cruel rulers. Islam will provide a moral guide for a better life and treats people equally. So this will help expand it. So this is anybody. It doesn't matter who you are, right? This is why Islam will expand. Most people were seeking safety and security, and Islam provided both of those things. They just wanted to be safe and secure and not be persecuted or outside invaders, and so they went with it and they rolled with it. Okay. So building a nation. Let's talk about Ali. You should know Ali as the fourth caliph. Ali was the cousin and he was the son-in-law of Muhammad. Let that one sink into your heads there a minute. Once you figure it out, you'll understand. He is the first male convert to Islam, means he converted to Islam. His claim to the role of caliph was challenged a lot. He was supposed to be the first caliph, but it ended up being the fourth caliph. And we know about all the caliphs, they're all assassinated for the most part. Ali would be assassinated 661 while at prayer, and that's obviously pretty horrific. There'll be a civil war, and what will come out of that civil war was Islam's first dynasty, which is the Umayyads. That's the important thing here. We know what you see in purple, what you see in blue, you need to obviously write down. But the Umayyads will be the first dynasty, Umayyads. So the dynasties of Islam. I talked about the Umayyads, and you see that on the green up there. You have North Africa, you have Spain, you have Arabian Peninsula, the Middle East, and that will be in power for about 100 years. The capital will be Damascus. That's why I had you guys write that down on your papers. Damascus, it's just north of Jerusalem. So you should write that down. That's the capital under the Umayyads. Okay, and I had write all. You should be writing all anyways. But The Umayyads are Sunnis, so they are looking for their idea of the rightly guided caliph is somebody that is just anybody. You don't have to be a blood relative. Okay, you can just be anybody as long as you're very faithful and you're wise and you have everything basically um, in gear. And but over time, these Sunni leaders were living a lifestyle like riches and corruption, and a lot of the Shiite Muslims and other people who weren't necessarily Islamic were tired of it because they were the ones getting exploited, and so they rose up and they kicked out all the Umayyad leaders. And sorry, yeah, they kicked out all the Umayyad leaders, and then they founded their own dynasty, and this is the Abbasid. The Abbasid is the Sunni, sorry, the Shiite. The Shiite. They kicked out all the Sunni leaders and implemented the Abbasid Sunni Shiites. This will take place between 750 and 1258 CE. They'll move the capital from Damascus to Baghdad, so they'll move it east. Okay, Baghdad is in Iraq today, and this is closer to those the Persian rulers that were there um, before they were able to conquer them. Basically, what happened was they didn't. Once they conquered a people, they set up governors and so forth. And there were Persian governors because they had conquered the Persians, and this was closer for them to administer the government. Right? They dominated trade. Okay, the Umayyads were all about expanding, expanding, expanding. The Abbasids, they basically were like, let's just calm things down. Let's just keep it chill, okay? And remember, if you're a Shiite under the Abbasids, a Shiite Muslim, you adhere to the belief that only blood relatives of Muhammad can be successors, caliphs, that is. All right. Here's the grand scope of what we are learning. If you see that this area where the Berbers are at, Berbers are these nomadic people that will eventually convert to Islam, as the expansion happens throughout North Africa, under the Umayyad Caliphate and so forth, everyone's converting, pretty much, not everyone, but a lot of people are converting to Islam. And they will cross the Strait of Gibraltar and into Spain. There's a little strait that there from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mediterranean, kind of like the tip of the beak of the seahorse. And they will continue on into Spain. Spain is referred to as Al-Andalus. Okay, you want to write that down. Spain, the Muslims didn't call it Spain. They called it Al-Andalus or Al-Andalus. And they will control Spain. And you want to write this down as well. If you're a Muslim and you live in Spain, you're referred to as a Moor. That's the group. Moors are Muslims who live in Spain. But they continued to expand. They continued to expand, the Muslims did, up into Europe. Because Spain is Europe. It's part of Europe, it's not all of Europe. But the Muslims kept expanding, expanding, expanding under the Umayyads. And eventually they reached a group called the Franks, which we will talk about here very shortly in the coming weeks when we talk about Europe during the Middle Ages. Basically, they're going to be the people that become the French. And Charles Martel will be Charles the Hammer, will be the guy that stops this Islamic expansion. He basically gathers, and I'll talk about him too again, a lot of these different tribes, kind of unite them, even basically grabbing farmers, anybody he can, because he realizes this is the moment. If we don't stop this Islamic expansion, then all of Europe, there's no one that's going to stop these Muslims. If we don't do it now, there's no one else that will unify and stop the Muslims. Let's do it now. So they gather all these forces, and this Battle of Tours stops Muslim expansion in 732 AD or CE. So Battle of Tours, the Moors were defeated at the Battle of Tours. It rhymes. The Moors were defeated at the Battle of Tours. Moors, Muslims living in Spain. That's Charles the Hammer, Charles Martel, a Frankish ruler. We'll talk about him, I said, later on. he'll be a Christian. Again, in the east, you want to put the siege of Baghdad in 1258. That halts the expansion. That kind of really Baghdad is sieged by the Mongols. Okay, who, one of the Khans, Hulagu Khan, burns the city and kills the last caliph. So that kind of basically eradicates the caliph rule over in the east. In the west, the Battle of Tours, again, the Frankish ruler, like I said, Charles Martel, stops Muslim expansion. This is very important. The reason why this Battle of Tours is so important, because if you think about it, today, most of Europe is Christian. If the Muslims would have won that battle, there's no one else that would have basically rose up and stopped them, meaning that most of Europe would be Muslim, which in turn means that most of us would be Muslim. I know it's like, hard to think about, but, again, we came here we might not even be here at all because, many of the people that came here originally were pilgrims seeking religious freedom, Christian religious freedom. Well, if they're not Christian, maybe they don't even need to come here. Maybe America's not even founded. So it's just one battle in history is that butterfly effect of, the next 1,500 years of how things are shaped. But let's talk about Islamic achievements. All right. So this is the Muslim golden age when things are really thriving. Universities are flourishing. So education in Muslim cities increased with the creation of universities. We know what universities are. Muslim scholars played an important role in preserving history and language, specifically the Greco-Roman, meaning the Greeks and the Romans. Right, Greek and Latin texts. They were fascinated by the Greeks and the Romans because remember these civilizations, their golden years are over, but the preservation of their knowledge is still there, and the Muslims are tapping into that and improving upon that. So Muslim scholars made achievements in science and medicine and math. The most important Muslim urban centers, like where these universities are, if you wanted to go to learn, like where the internet was, where the Wi-Fi was, Cordoba, which is in Spain, Mecca, Saudi Arabia, Cairo, Egypt, and Baghdad, Iraq. All the ones you see there in parentheses are modern day versions of that. So you do want to write those down, that these are urban centers. These are where the universities are at. This is where all the knowledge is. The spread of technology. Technology that came from new areas. Paper, I think came from China. It spread throughout the Muslim world to the Byzantine Empire and Western Europe. Okay, paper does come from China. We're talking about different trade. I know we're kind of diverting a little bit here, but trade's coming from everywhere and coming into the Muslim Empire, these Muslim empires. New crops from India, specifically spices, which I talked about on the last episode. Water wheels and windmills from the Middle East to Europe. All right, as you see on the top left and in the bottom right, water wheels and windmills. Navigation, how to get around in any environment. The compass came from China, which you do need to know. All the things you see in red, you should already be copying. Okay, you can't just write paper. You'd have to say paper from China or paper China, right, under the spread of technology. Compass also comes from there. The Latin sail, which you see in the bottom right, but you go up one, kind of in the middle there, the triangular sail, that's from India, all right, and that will be going over the Indian Ocean into Europe, and a new technology of sailing. Well, new technology with the sailing. They already knew how to sail, but with different sails. The astrolabe is probably one of the most important ones from the Middle East to Europe. Astro meaning star. You're basically able to coordinate where you are using the stars, using the nighttime sky to figure out where you are and where you need to go. Religion also spreads during this. Now, this is the epic time of trade, and because trade is so important to the development of countries, not only are products being shipped, but ideas are, which in turn is religion. We already know about Buddhism in Korea to Japan. That all started in India. It spread to China, obviously, as well. Hinduism and Buddhism from India to Southwest Asia. But you want to make sure you write down this one. This is the one in red. This is what we're talking about. Islam will go into West Africa, which we'll talk about here by episode 18, and Central/Southeast Asia. And we'll know Christianity will go to parts of North Africa. Scientific achievements. Right. Muslims were among the first to use observation in science, early scientific method, as you probably have learned in your classes, I'm assuming. They always sought to replicate findings. The main one here, again, is the astrolabe to navigate the seas using the sky. That's a big one there. And also, I too want you to write down what cartography is. Advances were made in the science of cartography, meaning map making, how to make maps. They made some of the most intricate and detailed maps of their era. So you guys kind of are cartographers because you are making maps on your Google Slides. Medical advances. So the physician Al-Razi, you need to obviously write him down, compiles medical knowledge from Greece, Syria, India, Arabia. He wrote it all down in the comprehensive book. So you need to make sure that you write down that Al-Razi is a physician that wrote the comprehensive book. Basically, all this knowledge that he had from all these different texts on these universities that he was getting from. His study of smallpox, Al-Razi wrote the rest, that rest could aid in recovery as well as fresh water and clean air. I mean, this sounds like Hippocrates, if you remember Hippocrates from Greece, but a lot of knowledge sometimes is lost over the years, and, replicating that is sometimes difficult. So all these other things he's finding about, Al-Razi is finding out about medicine. He's incorporating the treatise on smallpox and measles. So the foundations in order for us to look for a cure for these diseases comes from Al-Razi. And it's interesting too because we're obviously dealing with the virus now in China, with the coronavirus, which that's sweeping through China and starting to come into the US. So hopefully we can figure that out here sooner rather than later. Mathematical achievements. So most achievements made in mathematics were a result of their study of astronomy. And the reason partly they're studying astronomy is because, remember, Muslims need to know where they are on the earth at all times because they pray 5 times a day facing towards Mecca. So if they're on a sailboat, they can't just willy-nilly just pray any which direction. They have to know exactly where they are. And in order to figure out this stuff, they need to use math and science together to get their conclusions. Right? The most famous mathematician was Al-Khwarizmi. He created a technique called Algebra, which you guys know as algebra, okay, or you will know as algebra. That's what he's famous for. Al-Khwarizmi is known for Algebra or algebra. Muslims will adopt the Indian numeral system. This is what you see at the top there on the top right. That's the Indian numeral system. So we studied India, and part of their golden age under the Gupta was their numeral system. If you look under that, you see the Arabic numeral system. Looks very familiar, doesn't it? Well, that's because the Arabic numeral system is a modified version of the Indian numeral system, and it's the numeral system that we use today. That makes things so much easier. Imagine using Roman numerals to do math. You can't really, it's hard to do advanced math with Roman numerals. I've never tried it, but I can imagine it'd be very, very difficult. Okay. So those are the things, Khwarizmi algebra and the Indian numeral system to the Arabic numeral system are the important things there. Literature. So the rich tradition of Muslim storytelling dates back to the Bedouin tribes who would tell stories in their camps at night. The Quran is considered to be the most standard of all Islamic literature. So, what's the number one selling book of the Christians? Well, it's the Bible. What's probably the number one book selling of Muslims? The Quran. But the most famous Muslim stories that are not the Quran are 1001 Arabian Nights. It's a mixture of fairy tales and parables and legends. You may have heard of some of these, where these stories come from. It's like a continuous story that almost never ends. It's 1001 Arabian Nights told by this woman. And in it, Aladdin and the Wonderful Lamp. You just know that as Aladdin. Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. Maybe you have heard of that. and the 7 voyages of Sinbad the Sailor. Okay, Sinbad the Sailor. So those are the ones. The 1001 Arabian Nights is the most important piece of literature besides the Quran in Islamic history. Art and architecture. Muslim art and literature is enhanced by calligraphy. So remember, they can't draw any faces of Muhammad, or they don't really want it. They're not really drawing the caliphs, and they're not really drawing Allah because they're not supposed to depict them in any way, shape, or form. But what they can do is they can do beautiful handwriting and calligraphy, intricate geometrical designs. Okay, those are allowed. That's perfectly okay. Okay, because those are not unique to, those are human-made things. Because Muhammad is an Allah-made thing. Calligraphy would often decorate the mosque. Remember, mosques are prayer houses. It's basically like an open area, and you can throw your prayer mat down. There's no like pews like there are in church. So there's no, very rarely is there anybody, no imams guiding it. It's basically just you get in there, you say your prayers, which typically is reciting from the Quran, some passage from the Quran, and then you move on. You've done one of your prayers for the day. So this Arabic style of artwork incorporates geometric designs rather than actual images. So everything you see is a repeating geometrical design, and I'll probably push out a video of this here eventually. So much of Islamic architecture is the blending of the Byzantine architecture with Islamic designs. So columns and arches, and they have their domes, but you'll see the Islamic influence everywhere throughout Spain. So I haven't been to Spain yet. 2021 will be in Spain, but I know this because I was in Portugal. And Portugal is, if you know geography, it is just west of Spain. And you see the Islamic influence there heavily, and I know in Spain it will be even more so. And it's just beautiful, beautiful geometric designs. They're not depicting Muhammad, Allah, and caliphs or religious leaders. So that ends episode 17 of Shankism. This has been the Islamic expansion and achievements of the Muslims. Alrighty, hopefully you have a fantastic night. Alrighty, goodbye.